All right, how's it going? Okay, we got part 6 of the Dr. Phil show, so I'm going to try to mosey if I can. Let's go ahead and get started.
Well, we've seen Trayvon's biological parents in the news, but my next guest says his death is affecting her just as deeply. Today, Trayvon's stepmom is breaking her silence for the first time and telling her side of the story. Take a look.
Trayvon's parents divorced when he was a baby. I've been with Trayvon's father for 14 years, and we've been married 7 years. Trayvon spent time at my home. If he's not listening to his iPod, he's on the computer or watching TV. Trayvon was a sweet boy, a kind, gentle person, and for him to hurt someone, never.
What do you want to say to these folks that are...
So that was real nice. Gave her an opportunity to, pretty much set the stage. She apparently has spent a lot of time raising Trayvon, and she has an emotional connection to him, obviously. And he's about ready to let us know, or he's going to let her tell us how Trayvon is innocent and how George is guilty.
the man that shot and killed Trayvon?
I understand that he's your friend. And you guys, I mean, there's no way you can believe that story. That story has so many holes in it.
I don't know if you heard that. She said, I don't know how you guys can believe that story. It has so many holes in it. So we're going to see what holes she thinks it has.
And you sit up here and you like you were proud. I picked that gun out for him. I did this, I did that.
So I guess she's not going to point out the holes. She's just going to talk about the fact that this guy was proud of picking out the gun and trying to make him feel guilty.
You even want people to know that you did that. I mean, it is so, I mean, I would have never want to have anything to do with that. I know
She wants nothing to do with helping somebody pick out a gun. Well, you know what? That's good for you or her or whoever doesn't like guns. But for the rest of us, and seeing that it's a Second Amendment right, it's almost like saying, you helped him learn vocabulary so he could use words against other people, and he became a bully and hurt somebody's feelings, and that person killed themselves. I mean, really? You got to think about this stuff. This is the Second Amendment is just as important as the First Amendment. So if you don't like the Second Amendment, then you are obviously not pro-American.
and you love him, whatever, but that don't mean he's not a liar.
Well,
You believe what he's saying to
well,
you?
I'm not.
She's not saying what he said was a lie. She's just saying it's obvious that he's a liar. This is a typical. This is what I hear on the internet all the time. As far as YouTube is concerned, we listen to these comments, and there's a handful of people that will insist that George is guilty. But these are the usual things that we hear: the platitudes, the points that end up with no value, and you're going to see that here.
Proud of the fact that we had purchased that gun together, and our hearts are absolutely breaking for what had happened, for this to ever have happened to begin.
And this is sad that this guy is reduced to apologizing for helping George pick out his gun. He's been put on this stage. I'm surprised that he even came. He must have known that that Uncle Phil here was going to be a jerk, and have a whole crew of people that hate guns sitting in his audience there, just waiting to applaud at any little thing that would make George look bad and make them look bad. And of course, it's all false claims and artificial, because we already know that everything George did was right. We're going to talk about that.
We believe George. We believe that the evidence that has come out supports what he was saying, and I'm hoping that people will reserve judgment until a trial, until actual evidence is actually compared to each other.
Well, you haven't. You already say he's innocent.
I
Well, the reason he thinks that George is innocent is because he's looked at all the evidence. And after you look at the evidence and you listen to the witnesses, all the witnesses agree that George was on the bottom getting pummeled. There's no doubt about that. And there is no witnesses that suggest Trayvon was getting beat. In fact, there's no evidence that he ever got hit. None. Unless somebody wants to say that George hit Trayvon on his hand, because that's the only damage Trayvon has is to his hand. All the evidence, all the damage is to George, pointing to that George got beat. That's the only evidence. So I don't know where these people get this idea that there's some sort of evidence to the contrary.
I have a unique perspective, having George in my home, that he was the one that was screaming for help at the top of his lungs and fearing for his life.
Okay, you believe it was him? You heard the tape?
I heard the tape.
911, do you need police, fire, medical? Maybe both. I'm not sure. There's just someone screaming outside. I can't see him. I don't want to go out there. I don't know what's going on.
I mean, the sounds of the voice, it's obvious. It's obvious. I'm sure, you know what? It's even obvious to the Trayvon supporters, because you really don't hear much anymore of them suggesting Trayvon was the person yelling. Now, after this video, if they listen to the video up to this point and hear me talking about this, they'll say, "Oh, no, there's no evidence." They'll even point out some study by some biased guy that was trying to win points, that it was proven that it wasn't George. No, in fact, we know that we have videos that we could test Trayvon's voice, but they refused to allow that. Trayvon had a birthday party just days before that, which would have given a perfect opportunity to videotape. You know that all these people with their cell phones out were videotaping his birthday, so all we need to do is listen.
That is not a grown man screaming.
Well,
She said that was not a grown man screaming. But you notice she didn't say that it was Trayvon. I've been with Trayvon since he was a little kid. I know Trayvon's voice. That was his voice. He was screaming. No, she didn't say that. That was not a grown man screaming. Come on, really? Yes, it was. You just need to listen to my video about the voice comparisons. You'll see that I've got a little clip of Trayvon, and he's got a low voice, and George has the high-pitched voice. So if you're talking about a grown man, George would have the high pitch, the more of a childish voice, and Trayvon would have the low voice.
With his wife when she heard that for the first time.
Okay.
And I am 100% certain that that was her husband screaming for
Because
his
she told you
life.
she broke
Because I
down
heard it for
inconsolable.
myself.
How are you going to be getting your...
So you heard them. They were there when George's wife heard that scream for the first time, and she became she was inconsolable. He said she was so upset. She knew that was her husband, and he was screaming for his life, and that's what they just said.
And you screaming and you getting the gun at the same time.
Well, my
So then her argument immediately is, how can you get in your head banged and screaming and you're reaching for your gun at the same time? Well, he wasn't. Remember, he went 40 seconds at least that we can hear on the 911 tape. And it takes time to call 911 and get through and everything. So I'm guessing at least a minute of time that he's screaming. And so she's saying, how can he do that? How is it? He's fighting off this guy. You know, his testimony was he forgot he even had a gun up until the point where Trayvon reached for it. That's when he was like, uh-oh. Right? Isn't that what the testimony was? If anyone can prove me wrong on that, feel free, but that's what George said.
let's let any analyzation of the tapes show who it actually was. I wasn't
tell
there.
you this much. He put his hands on him. He was defending himself.
And this is a typical Trayvon supporter attitude. Once you've proven this wrong or that wrong, they immediately change to something else. He shouldn't have put his hands on him. He shouldn't have put his, what? Where's the evidence that George put his hands on Trayvon? The only evidence we have is that George got hit by Trayvon. So the only time that that there was physical contact between the two was when Trayvon initiated it. That's the only evidence we have. But she just is going on and on as if she's speaking facts. So we know, I'm positive. We'll see.
Okay, if Zimmerman never put his hands on him, this wouldn't have been, we wouldn't be here right now. Right now. And you guys sitting back and say he was defending himself from what?
From a 17-year-old big guy. Anyone want to argue that point, go look at the 7-Eleven tape, the tape from the 7-Eleven store, and compare the line on the wall to him walking in to all the other people. He's the tallest guy in the group. And people say, oh, well, tall doesn't mean anything, you know. A short, fat guy's stronger. Oh, really? Really? Well, have you ever watched MMA? Have you ever noticed that they go by reach? They say, what is this guy's reach compared to that guy's reach? Sure, they compare weight, but that's because of muscle. A guy with a lot more weight is going to have a lot more muscle, generally speaking, unless you're a porgy like Georgie. There's just no way. I mean, I would guess that George at that time probably was 35% fat, and Trayvon was probably 8% fat. There's just, you know, there's no comparing. And George had probably a 6-inch or 8-inch disadvantage on reach. So Trayvon could knock him cold before George could ever get close.
From attack. He attacked Trayvon.
How would you know? We weren't there. I want the evidence from witnesses to actually come out and go.
He got out of his car.
Now, she doesn't want to talk about what the witnesses say. And this is the typical Trayvon supporter. Let's not talk about that. As soon as you bring it up, he said, let's just wait. Let's listen to the evidence. Let's talk to the witnesses and see what they have to say. And she don't want to talk about that. Now she wants to change it over to what? If he wouldn't have got out of his car, he'd have been fine, right? Right? Well, let's talk about that.
You say he wasn't on duty.
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay, he lost sight. Leave.
You cannot dispute the fact that she raises very good and valid points.
She says that this wouldn't have happened if he didn't get out of his car, but that's not necessarily true. I read in the paper just recently, this last week, that a guy got shot sitting in his car. He was just sitting there. He was doing nothing wrong, just sitting there, and this guy walks up beside him. You know, you're in the dark, you're sitting in your car. Try to look out your windows when you're sitting in the dark in your car. And then go from the outside and look at somebody sitting in their car. It's real obvious that the person on the outside has the advantage. So whoever tells you that you're safer in your car than you are outside when there's a gun involved is crazy. And there's no way to know. There's no way George could have known whether Trayvon had a gun or not. Just impossible.
If he isn't carrying a gun, then nobody gets shot. Okay?
That's not true. If George is not carrying a gun, then the guy that's attacking him doesn't get shot. It doesn't mean George couldn't get shot. How do we know Trayvon didn't have a gun or couldn't have had a gun? Anybody could have a gun. So that's a stupid argument to tell people, well, if he didn't have a gun, no one gets shot. That's just stupid. Yeah, maybe in that particular situation where Trayvon wasn't armed at the time, but there was no way to know that.
He doesn't get out of his truck, nobody gets shot.
If he doesn't get out of his truck, then he's not helping anybody in the neighborhood. And if the single mother down the street gets attacked and killed, and George knew that some guy went down that way and did nothing about it, how do you think he'd feel? How do you think the rest of the neighborhood would feel? How do you think people would feel knowing that this guy had the knowledge? He even was armed. He could have followed this guy and made sure that this lady and her child didn't get killed and raped. But no, he was too chicken. You know, what do you think would happen? See, turn it around. Look at the possibilities. Yeah, Trayvon, Trayvon wasn't trying to rape some lady and kill her child. I'm just saying there was no way to know that. You know, if George had the pre-knowledge of everything, then he wouldn't have made any mistakes. There would be no possibility for any error, right? If he could read minds, there wouldn't have been a problem. But that's not the case.
He behaves is consistently with the charter of the Neighborhood Watch Program.
Look, this is real important, Dr. Phil. You know, you keep saying it and it makes you look so stupid. We have civil rights. Our civil rights are completely undeniable. You can't take away my right to free speech because I become a neighborhood watch. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to take away civil rights. You're telling me you joined the neighborhood watch, so you agree to their standards. And their standards say you're not allowed to vote. You're not allowed to speak freely. You're not allowed, whatever their standards are. It's ridiculous. They can make whatever standards they want. They can make it up. It's a private club. But guess what? They can't legally deny you your rights. And my right and George's right to bear arms cannot be infringed. Do you understand that? Is it clear to you? I sure hope so.
To observe and report, nobody gets shot. This is a kid. This is a kid. It's a child. He went to the store to get some Skittles, and he came home dead.
He keeps saying the same crap over and over again, and it makes him look so stupid. I mean, this is a kid. This is a kid. Well, like I've said in other videos, we've had kids younger than him kill people in towns just right here, all around me. Kids smaller than Trayvon pull out a gun and shoot two people at the same time. Bang, bang. Give me money, no money, bang, bang, you're dead. So quit telling me he's a child. Quit telling me he was going for Skittles and iced tea because it's bull, all right? He was out. He was causing trouble. It was obvious he got caught doing whatever it was. He knew that he was doing something wrong because he ran. And nobody runs away when they're walking through a gated community and they see a guy that obviously is the community watch guy. It's obvious. And we know that by Dee Dee's comments. Dee Dee never said that he was afraid that George was a gang member or something like that. Said it's a white guy. He's in his SUV. He's talking on the phone. You know, most people assume when someone's talking on the phone, they're calling the cops. They're calling the cops on you. And that's what Trayvon would think, because obviously Trayvon has been discriminated against before because of the way he dresses. You know, people are nervous about people that walk around with hoodies on, especially in Florida. It's an unusual thing to see a guy with a hoodie on in the dark, walking through the neighborhood, standing in an unusual place it's just unusual.
Okay, that's not okay. I mean,
Sure.
So he didn't approach the truck. He didn't knock on the window and say.
He did approach the truck. He did talk to George through the window. He didn't knock on the window, but he talked to him through the window. We even have the sound of his voice going through the window, so we know. So everything that Uncle Phil is saying, I don't even want to call him doctor anymore. Everything that Uncle Phil is saying from now on, we're just going to assume is a lie unless we can prove it otherwise, because pretty much everything he said so far is a lie or a misstatement of fact.
Following me and reach in and grab him, he had to get out of the truck and go after the boy. Now, you have to acknowledge that or you lose all credibility.
No, he's allowed to get out of his truck. He's allowed to follow. That is part of the watch program. How do you watch somebody that goes around the corner if you don't go around the corner and peek around the corner and see where they went? Tell me that, Uncle Phil. How do you suppose they're supposed to watch and report? You keep saying it over and over. It's watch and report, not watch and apprehend. Where's the evidence that George ever tried to catch him? This is the most important fact. And if you can't find that fact, then you're just full of crap. And you can just keep flapping your gums, but it means nothing in the court of law. It's just a lot of hot air.
Yeah, he obviously got out of the truck.
Right.
I think the misconception
Had
is
he never
that
gotten out of the truck, this wouldn't have happened, correct?
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Sure.
That's not to say that George wouldn't have got killed if he was not, you're sitting in your car, you're a sitting duck, like that guy that got killed last week that I was just talking about. People get killed sitting in their car all the time. So to tell me that it doesn't happen is bullcrap. Just straight out crazy talk.
It's that simple. that's the mistake. That's the first link in the chain. You said yourself, you told him to do this over, you told him to stay in the truck.
Sure.
We've got to take a break. There's been a lot of debate.
Well, that's the end of that segment. And as you know, I disagree completely with Uncle Phil. I think that he's an idiot. I think that he's doing this for his pay, that he gets paid to lie and to, I mean, you can pretty much tell it's one or the other. Either he's a total, he has no clue of the facts of the case, or he's doing this because, the boss man told him. He said, "You want to get paid?" He's like, "Well, I disagree with this opinion." Well, you want to get paid? He works for the big networks. And remember, the networks are owned by a handful of people. All the news media that you get, every ounce of information that you get, other than from the internet, but everything you get from the TV is organized and controlled. Every bit of knowledge base that you gain from your boob tube is controlled through these people. So believe me when I tell you, you're not going to hear anything about this case except what they want you to hear, unless you have access to people like me that go around and dig it all up and straighten it out to show you the facts. This is, straight out bull crap. But you wouldn't know that if all you had was Dr. Phil to sit here and watch. You would think, my goodness, these guys are terrible. Anyhow, it's good talking to you guys. We'll talk to you later. Bye.